Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in to Cruising with the Carsons. I will be your host, as always, Greg Carson. But as always, one thing is, come on, greetings and salutations, everybody. We have a very special guest today. I've been excited for this one for quite a while. A certain gentleman reached out to me who watches the channel and wanted to just give me some words of encouragement and chat a little bit. And we talked a little further. And come to find out that he is a professional RV transporter who gets to see a thing or two because he knows a thing or two. And I'd like to introduce everybody to Jim. We're not going to use last names, but he's agreed to go on camera. And Jim, say hi to everybody. Thanks for coming.
Hey, folks. How you doing?
All right, man. I appreciate you being here, Jim. So I guess
Yep.
for starters, brother, how long have you been an RV transporter?
I entered RV transport in end of January of 2022 during COVID.
Okay.
That's when I entered RV transport, and this is my semi-retired job. So
Sure.
it's not like I need to drive like hard like some of these guys do, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Awesome. Is that mainly fifth wheels or just travel trailer fifth wheels? Any coaches? What do you mainly haul, Jim?
I'm tow away. So I do have my commercial driver's license because my background before RV transport, I would drive for some friends that had end dumps, like 18-yard end dumps or 15-yard dump trucks, and I've done flatbed from here to Michigan and stuff for like the pipeline stuff, for like Enbridge and stuff like that. So yeah,
Okay.
that's my
Okay.
background with, and a lot of military equipment, of course, and my veteran background. So
Yes, sir. And again, I thank you for your service, brother. Much appreciated.
thank you.
Absolutely. Jim, do you transport for just one manufacturer in particular, or do you do them all? What's your background there, boss?
I mostly, when I'm doing fifth wheels, most of them I've hauled are Keystone,
Okay.
because one of the yards that I pull out of is right across from one of the manufacturing Keystone. But Keystone in Goshen, there, one of the yards that I pull out of by Keystone, they'll change up their fifth wheels to travel trailers. Depends on what their price point, what the market is, and we've seen a reduction of I've seen a lot of reduction of fifth wheels, probably because the interest rates and so
Yeah.
forth, and then they're just more expensive. But I think they're focusing their price point on the 20 to $40,000 campers, the bumper
Yeah.
poles.
Yeah.
So I've hauled a lot of Keystone. I've hauled a lot of East and West stuff, which is Forest River product.
Yeah.
I pulled a lot of Arctic Wolves, Coleman, which is a Camping World brand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've pulled a lot.
We're going to start getting into the juicy stuff here, Jim. So
Let's do it.
I might have to insert a drum roll at this part.
That's
This is
okay.
this is a big question
Yep.
that I have, as well as many, many other seasoned RVers who have been in this industry for a very long time. Because we hear the horror stories, we hear the rumor mills churning, we see quirps and quips and rumblings on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. When it comes to RV transport,
Right.
would you say it's true, or could we get your opinion on what we hear about that? Which is, there are a percentage of transporters who, as we know, get paid by the mile or by the load. So they
Yep.
are hell bent for election to get that rig down the road as fast as they can,
Right.
not concerned about the rig's well-being or the abuse or the earthquake rolling down the highway 75, 80 miles an hour. What's your take on that, Jim?
Well, bottom line is our electronic logging devices, they could actually go into our apps because it has a tracking, like a location track where you're
Yeah.
at. And if I pick up a load up on like today, I'll have to do a check call in tomorrow by 10 o'clock or something, so it
Yeah.
knows where I'm at if I have to lay over and sleep and get off the road for 8 or 10 hours to start again for my DOT hours. They can figure out by distance equals rate times time formula what your speed is. And there's
Okay.
been people terminated for exceeding speed limit of 10 over.
Really?
The post,
Ah,
oh yes.
interesting.
And a lot of people aren't aware of that. Yep. And depends on the rig I'm pulling. If I'm pulling a big park model, I like to stay around 65 because the mileage is horrible.
Yeah.
But and it all depends on what's going on with Mother Nature.
Tell us a little bit about where does the liability factor come to play when you're towing a manufacturer's rig to a dealership?
Right.
Where does your liability come into play? When are you liable if something happens?
Liability starts right when you leave that yard.
With your aviation and inspection background,
Mhm.
you had to be very, very detail oriented, right down to certain increments and
Right.
measurement.
Yep.
Would that be correct in saying that?
It is. It is. It's
Okay.
attention to detail. It's attention to
Okay, so let
detail.
me ask you this question. On the heels of what I just asked you, if you're able to
Right.
answer this question, if not, I understand.
Yep.
When you haul campers, when you're in Indiana, when you see all this stuff, in your opinion, what manufacturer puts out the worst product, in your opinion, if you're able to say?
I've seen the degradation of quality across all lines. The high end Pinnacles, I've hauled Pinnacles to the $19,000 or $25,000 Colemans. I've seen it across the board. It's um it the other units that are built probably better, but I can't haul them because of my weight scale. Is probably like a DRV or a Riverstone.
Interesting.
The Riverstones are. I look at the build quality there in some of the yards I pull, and the fit and finish is much better. But they're
Yeah,
paying $225,000 for the units and stuff. So, but
that's
mostly, I'm seeing a degradation across all levels from 190,000 down to the $25,000 units.
you get what you pay for.
Yep.
Yeah, we looked at Riverstone. Actually, we really wanted to pull the trigger on a
Right.
Riverstone about 2 or 3 months ago.
Right.
And for us, we just couldn't justify spending upwards of $200,000 because we're not full time.
Right.
We just go south for the winter. We use it during the summer a couple times during the
Right.
summer, and that's it. But
Right.
what I can tell you is much like you just made a reference to, when I put my hands on those products, such as Riverstone or DRV, Mobile Suites, when you put your hands on the
Yep.
quality difference, when you climb on, like for me, I do a lot of up close scrutinizing, as you've seen
Yep.
in the videos, and
Yep.
like you with your background inspection,
Hmm.
in inspections, you scrutinize things to the greatest detail that you can.
Right.
And when I went underneath, inside, and up on top of a Riverstone and of a new Mobile Suites,
Right.
hands down,
Right.
much better
Right.
quality. And I would assume, well, let me ask you this.
Hmm.
Do you have do you have any horror stories, or have you had firsthand knowledge of any horror stories of hauling a fifth wheel or a travel trailer from Indiana to a specific dealership, no matter where it's located in the United States,
Right.
where something catastrophic happened because of build quality that goes back directly to the manufacturer, to the point where either you couldn't even haul it, or you had to take it back to the factory, or someone else had to come and get it? Has anything like that ever happened to you, or have you ever heard of anything like that?
Yeah, I can bring up a couple instances. So it's interesting. I was going through Chicago through the construction. That was when I first started this RV transport, and there was another driver from Indiana Transport driving in front of me, and it was like a Coleman. It was a stick and tin, probably like a 25 footer, 26-foot bumper pull.
Yeah.
and the back wall was hanging off of the camper.
Good
The
Lord.
one
Tell
side
us
was
real
pulled
quick.
away.
Tell
Yeah,
the audience real quick what you talked to me about this. Tell the audience what you mean by stick and tin. They're gonna love this.
stick and tin is
I
when
love
the side of the camper is aluminum. It's kind of wavy. It's like siding on skirting on an older like trailer house, mobile home, and we call them stick and tins because the inner structure um is made out of like 2x2s, and it's sometimes they're 16-inch on center, then they put the bat insulation in it. There are some manufacturers that do fiberglass exterior, but they're still stick and tin. So when you go down the road, things are doing this from the
and this
sidewalls and stuff.
this is a
And
this is a
and
brand
they're
new unit
nailed.
you were
They're
talking about?
nailed. Yeah, stick and tin. That was a stick and tin. This one that the back wall was hanging off.
A
And
brand
then
new
when
one.
I met up with the driver, and I mean, I could see him, but the guy was driving like 80 miles an hour. And he was blowing by me, and I was sitting, 67, 68-ish when I was pulling. And then I met up with him. I mean, for my fuel stop down by Fort McCoy, Wisconsin on 94, the corridor there, and the wall was still hanging. He was heading to wherever he was going.
So what happens in a case like that, Jim? Are is the
Well,
manufacturer gonna try to pin it back on you, the driver, somehow, or how does that work?
I didn't witness what happened. Either that driver tagged one of them barriers or the wall was just falling off because of poor construction.
Isn't that, in your opinion, putting the general public at risk of safety if that thing would have basically started falling off of the frame or something more catastrophic happened?
Yeah, I mean, the driver, when when we pick up a load, and for example, your load, since it was a warranty, they may have sent a driver up, or they called that a reload. So they probably dispatched that. They may have dispatched another company that they deal with directly to pick it up if there was a driver in the area. And we call that a reload. I have hauled campers that were on warranty, like Jayco's,
Yeah.
like the one that yours wasn't a Jayco, the one that you returned to the factory, but I worked on Jayco's, or I've done reloads for Jayco's that were repaired because of cracking, because of frame flex.
Hmm.
And they were actually repaired out of Minneapolis area. And I can't tell the manufacturer or the dealership, but I've taken units from Minneapolis to Billings that
Yeah.
were 44 footers, and they were
Interesting.
cracking because they were
Interesting.
flexing. The sidewalls are cracking and breaking.
That brings me to another question, Jim. You as a
Right.
driver, and I'm
Yep.
sure you're in that industry, you hear whisperings and rumblings, you
Yep.
know other drivers, um, frame flex issues coming out of Indiana, etc.
Right.
Is that like is there a lot of chatter behind the scenes with you people who are in the transport business? Is it a big concern for you? Have you come across it?
Well, this is really weird because when we have our annual meetings where they require, or at least the company that they require, but they recommend that all drivers go to their drivers banquets and stuff like that, but they
Yeah,
don't allow any Q&As for us to ask questions. They
really.
coordinate it. It's basically to put out, we're doing this, we're doing that, the industry looks good, blah blah blah, and they don't allow Q&As. And I wish they would, because I would say I'm seeing quality issues. I believe the hardware screws and bolts that I found in the camper, brand new from the manufacturer, that if that slide was open, it's going to take the floor out.
Wow.
I've picked them up where the slot or the awnings were 2 inches out, and if I didn't retract them, they would have ripped off, and then I'm liable for that. I mean,
Wow.
it's like CYOA, you know what I mean? I've Frame Flex is out there, and I mean, I'll look down. I have a trained eye from fabrication. I can look at these trailers and fifth wheels, and I can see the tail section is sagging.
Wow.
Because the outriggers, that they're
Yeah.
not put down. Um, and I don't know why they don't make a beefier frame. I have no clue. It's almost like they engineer it just enough to get it out the door.
Have you ever had a situation, Jim, where you take a unit, you bring it to a dealership,
Yep.
and they look it all over, and
Yep.
they come back at you and say, "Hey, how did this happen?" Or "What happened here? How did this fail? What's going on?"
I had a service manager in Forest Lake, Minnesota, and I'm not going to say the company, but they have a big flag. And in that area, there's two locations that have big flags, Hugo and Forest Lake. And the location there, and my wife was with me because we were looking at replacing one of our cars. So she met me down there and she was in my truck. And then we were going to go to Minneapolis and look at some of the brands that we were looking at. And this guy came outside and he says, "What the F is this?" I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "There's effing scratches up there. What did you hit?" And it's like on the front cap. And it's like, "What do you mean?" I says, "I drive the interstate. Don't hit anything." And so he says, "Why don't you come up on the effing front on the roof?" And I says, "We're not allowed to come on the roof." He says, come up on the effing front roof with me." And I said, "What?" So I just was nice and I walked up on the roof and he says, "Look at that. You hit something." I took my palm out. I spit on my palm and I rubbed it off. It was like it hit a grasshopper or something. So this is what they do. The
Wow.
manufacturer caught them lying because they get paid like an hour and a half to 2 hours PDI uh, for pre-delivery delivery inspection
Yeah.
before it goes for sale to a customer like you or whatever.
How about
Right.
have you ever had to go? I mean, do you only haul new rigs, or have you ever been dispatched to go pick up like a unit that had frame flex or had a severe manufacturer defect from a dealership or whatever back to Indiana?
Never back to Indiana, but this Jayco Pinnacle, it was a toy hauler, and that was the owner was an engineer for a power company, but I picked his unit up. Somebody transported from Billings back to Minneapolis and they repaired it. That was a frame flex issue.
Hmm.
I've seen, and I asked the technician where the shop, they had an offsite shop made away from the main RV sales, where
Yeah.
that's all they were doing. Uh, they were doing pinnacles, that type of size. They were having frame flex. It was cracking up by the front bedroom and
Yeah.
cracking the side wall. Um, I didn't hear anything for the back, but it's really weird because they'd have to cut the wall apart, put gusset some type of frame repair, and
Yeah.
I didn't witness that, but I knew what was done because of just in my aviation airline experience. So
Would you say there was a lot of statistics back when 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 months ago that frame failure and frame flex was only affecting less than half of 1% of all units out there. You hear any chatterings or rumblings about that?
so everybody's tight-lipped. They have a non-disclosure and they can't talk about it. And I don't think that's right. I believe in transparency. And if there is an issue with something, they just need to fix it and
Yeah.
own up to it. Um, it's just like bad publicity. You want somebody to tell 10 people and then they tell 10 people, or do you want to get it fixed right? And they say, "Hey, they stood up for me and they fixed it right." A lot of these quality control people, they know there's issues with these campers and they're pushing it off on the dealers to do the warranty work.
Yeah.
I see a laundry list of every camper. They'll put like a microwave when they're doing final assembly before they put it in, and they'll slide it across and there'll be gouges on the countertop,
One
you know?
big one sad thing about what you just said, Jim, was there
Right,
are so many dealerships out there that aren't qualified to do some of these major repairs. I've
right,
seen so many horror stories of, a manufacturer telling the customer, "Well, take it into your dealership or take it into this dealership."
right,
And it sits and
right,
sits out of service 90 days, 120 days, 180 days because the
right,
dealerships aren't qualified or prepared to handle
right,
some of those big, job tasks that got put upon them. So that's kind of a sad thing. But
right.
one interesting thing that comes to mind, and we'll probably wrap up with this question, but
Yep.
one interesting thing that comes to mind, Jim, was our conversation we had yesterday.
Yep.
When you said that you get to see all of the paperwork from the dealership and
Oh
the
yeah.
manufacturer, and that
Yep.
you get to see what the manufacturer sold that unit to the
Right.
dealership for the
Right.
amount of money. Did I hear that correctly?
I see what they pay for it. I look at what MSRP is, and it's interesting is a few times I would go on the website to see what that same type of camper sold for, and it's crazy. Some of them are $20,000-$30,000 margins. And then when they say we're 10,000 off MSRP, I'm thinking, well, I'm seeing this build quality and I'm seeing they're still walking away with $20,000. I mean, that's better money than selling cars. He told me that some of the Class A's he was selling, their profit margins were 40 and 50 grand, and he was seeing 10K sales on every unit Class A
Yeah.
he was selling.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
Jim, is there anything else you can think of you'd like to add in closing, or anything, or any advice for people?
Well, I would recommend, and I'm not doing this for my part, but I would recommend um somebody to get an independent inspector to look at their campers if they're going to do a purchase agreement. None of that is done up here. I just um I just don't think that, maybe there is an inspector up here and I'm not aware of it because I'm in Duluth, Minnesota, northern Minnesota. But I really think somebody should, if they can afford $350, if they're going to buy a nice used unit or something, they should, even a new unit, open the slides and look up underneath the flaps. And I guarantee you, every new one, I find
Yeah.
screws. I find screws. And I open up a cabinet. When you're paying $130,000 for a camper, or 150 or whatever it is, when you open a cabinet, there shouldn't be a pile of sawdust in there. Right.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell
So,
you what, my brother, I deeply appreciate your time on this
mhm,
Saturday morning that you gave me, and I greatly appreciate your bringing some stuff to the table and some things to light for people to think about, and
mhm.
your time and everything, your service to our military. I thank you again for that, sir. And
Yeah, thank
you
you.
viewers out there, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And Jim, I got a feeling our paths will cross again, sir. But until then, I bid you adieu, and I thank you for your time. And we'll see you guys on the next one.